Avowed is nothing special, and in my opinion, for an RPG experience, I think it's pretty watered down. If I want to be honest with you, I'm pretty disappointed with this game since I was hyped for it when they first revealed it in 2020, almost 5 years ago. And it's not a terrible game by any means. It's a very average game, but if we're just strictly talking RPG experience, it definitely feels a little hollow for me. And it starts to feel hollow once you compare it to other RPG games such as Skyrim or Morrowind from the Elder Scrolls series or Fallout New Vegas, obviously from the Fallout series. And it just made me want to play these games even more now. Like, I know the developers themselves at Obsidian said in an interview, don't compare this directly to Skyrim because it's not Skyrim, but how can you not compare it? Skyrim is one of the best RPG games of all time. And even back in 2011, people were saying Skyrim is way more watered down compared to, say, Oblivion or Morrowind, and that is definitely true, but now we just keep watering it down. It's not good. Now again, the game isn't all bad. There were definitely some things I enjoyed here, definitely some positives while playing, but overall it was pretty disappointing to me. So the problems with this game start right off the bat with the story. At the start of the game, there's an introductory cutscene, and it's narrated by someone? I don't know. They mention some background and some lore, like that you're a godlike, you're heading to an island to fix a plague, you also get to create your character, and then it shows you on a ship heading to the island, and it's very stormy, and you hear a cannonball hit your ship, screen goes black, and you crash land onto the ship. There's really nothing about this intro that made me care about the story so far. Like, right off the bat, okay, that's it. I think it's a lot better when games put you actually in that scenario and make it intense or make you care about it somehow. Although cutscenes to start off a video game can definitely work. Like, let's compare this to Fallout New Vegas, for example, which does start off with a cutscene. In Fallout New Vegas, you're tied up at a campfire with a bunch of menacing looking individuals surrounding you, and one of the main antagonists of the game is giving you a little speech. He puts a gun to your head and he shoots you in the head. I mean, that if that doesn't get you invested right off the bat, I'm not sure what will. Skyrim, for example, it's not a cutscene. You're actually in the game, and you wake up on a wagon. I mean, everybody knows this. You wake up on the wagon going somewhere, but it's all being explained to you by a character, and it's getting slowly more and more intense as you're approaching the chopping block. And then a dragon attacks out of nowhere and saves you, and now you have to escape. I mean, again, it gets you invested very quickly into the story as to what's going on. I want to figure out what's happening here. But with Avowed, okay, it's not very intense. It's just being narrated by some random nobody. And now we're waking up on an island and there's just some random lizard guy standing here. Okay. Now once your character wakes up and you start the game, it's more or less a tutorial, which is perfectly fine. And you learn about looting, combat, basic controls, some dialogue options, stuff like that. The problems with this game really start on the tutorial island, and it actually starts with the dialogue and some of the RPG elements of this game. So eventually you're going to meet a prisoner, some lady in a jail cell, and you're going to talk to her, and she's going to seem a little suspicious. You're going to have some options if you want to free her or let her go. She says she has a ship. Well, what do? You can choose. I thought it would be funny if I freed her to take her ship and then killed her, just to see what would happen. Well, I did that. We opened the jail cell, and I swing at her, and nothing happens. Just poof. They give you the illusion of choice. Alright, well, maybe it'll get better from here on out. Progressing through this game, though, made me realize all the RPG elements I love in a game are very watered down here. Some of the most important RPG elements for me are making choices, dialogue, and some immersion when it comes to role playing who you want to be. So for making choices, that can be with dialogue, choosing different options, but making choices can be joining different factions, which also ties into role playing to your character. Do you want to be evil? Do you want to be good? Do you want to be neutral? Do you want to be just some craze killer that takes out everyone in the entire world? It's perfectly up to you. Your dialogue choices in this game really don't make a difference. It has no impact on the story, your character's standing in the world. It makes no difference. In fact, every time I saw a dialogue option that said to attack, I would almost always choose that because it felt like it actually had some impact, as opposed to the other ones where my character says something witty or maybe more evil or good and nothing changes. It's the same result either way. So at least the attack option was there to feel like I had choice. Speaking of the dialogue in this game, I want to get into the characters. None of the characters in this game gave me any real reason to care about them. It's also just seemed a little weird how some of these characters just talk like normal people, but some of them look like lizards, or some of them look like some weird hybrid of a lemur and a human, but they just sound like normal humans, and it feels a little odd considering this is a fantasy world. It kind of takes me out of it, especially with the voice acting. Some of the voice acting is pretty questionable. Some of the voices in this game are a little funny.
Luckily, I'm trying to do work for the betterment of the world. That ought to win me some favor if the gods are watching. Ha! Good point. I suppose my work wasn't doing Rimmergand any favors, huh?
Sapiento di Falva, alchemist and dreamer, at your service.
You may have noticed, or perhaps not, since no doubt you've been busy, that wildlife here has gone a bit...
He sounds like a stereotypical guy trying to impersonate an Italian, like his hands in the air like, a bibbidi bobbidi boop, please help me. It just made me laugh. Like, I don't believe that this is this guy's normal voice. I just don't believe it. There's no way. There were also some funny lines in this game.
Oh, Andra's tits! Are we a charity now? Fine.
I'm not ready. I've never even touched a girl. It's not fair.
Like, it genuinely made me laugh. I honestly found myself skipping the dialogue a lot of the time because it was just very boring, and I really just didn't care to listen. I just wanted to move on with whatever they were saying, especially since the dialogue has no actual difference when I make a choice of what I say. So why should I even care what I say? The combat is by far the best part of this game. I loved the combat. It was so fun to play, and it's kind of why I would also choose the attack option in all dialogue, besides that being the only option that has impact and weight. I get to do the combat, and the combat was a lot of fun. I love the dodging system, where you can dodge left, you can dodge right, you can dodge backwards. It makes it feel very fluid. And I also love the option to have two different setups at once. So I was playing on a controller, and if you press Y, you can switch between them. So one of my setups was I had an enchanted sword with a shield, or enchanted sword with a gun. And then if I pressed Y, I could switch to my magic-based build with a wand and a book. Having this in the game feels really fluid to use. I can always switch between whatever style I want depending on the situation I'm in. I don't have to go to a menu and then switch stuff around and have it feel really clunky. I could just hit Y on the fly, switch my build, bam, I can use it. This game also utilizes grenades, which I found myself not really using too much because I just forgot about them. So eventually I had a huge abundance of them, and I could just start chucking them at my enemies. The stun meter was really cool, where every time you attack an enemy, you're going to add to their stun meter, and once it fills up, you can actually just unleash an attack where you're invincible. And if they're close to dying, it's just really epic. It goes into slow motion, and you can just stab them in the throat or something, or if you're using a gun, you just shoot them down. So I really love that option. Using the guns, though, was so fun. One of the best parts of the combat with this game. I always loved using a sword with a gun, and the gun can be used to actually stun enemies. Like, if an archer is pulling back his arrow, you can just shoot him in the face real quick and it'll stun him. Then you can get close to him and start swinging your sword. Obviously, you can also use the gun to do damage or finish off an enemy, but I found it really useful to stun anybody in the middle of an attack. It's also kind of funny that the gun is used with your stamina bar. It's like, my guy's pulling the trigger a little too hard and he ran out of finger energy. I mean, I don't really know how else they would balance it in this game without it being annoying. Like, probably using bullets that you'd have to loot would be a little annoying. Maybe they tested it. So I'm fine with the way it works. It's just kind of a funny thought. The magic system in this game felt fun. Having a wand in one hand and a book in the other to create spells out of thin air, it felt very different to me. I'm not sure, but I like to switch it on the fly. So if I was using a melee option, I could be using that and then switch to my wand and book build, and I could back off and start casting spells at an enemy. Like with the book, I could use fire, I could use shock, I could use some sort of frost spell, and then with the wand, just keep hitting him, backing off, hitting them, backing off. With the combat, you also have special abilities you can use. Like, for example, I love to use the charge attack. There's a lot of other abilities you could use with your allies too, with your companions. For my companions, I had one where Kai would teleport to an enemy and he would shoot him. With Marius, you could have him take roots from the ground to hold an enemy in place. So if you have a lot of enemies around you, you can hold one in place to shoot them, or hold them in place and then start focusing on another enemy. It felt very fluid. The combat is by far the best part of this game. It's not even close. Upgrading your armor and weapons is a necessity to progress through this game. You'll notice that some enemies might have a skull or 2 or 3 skulls next to their name, or even some quests in your journal might have a couple skulls, and that's the game's way of telling you this is too hard for you. You need to go out, level up, upgrade your armor and weapons, and come back and then do this, or else you're kind of just running into a brick wall. It's super simple to upgrade your armor and weapons. All you need is specific materials in order to do it, and you can purchase these. You'll find them while looting in the world, or you could take extra items like weapon and armor you find, just looting them, and then scrap them. You can decompose them basically for those materials, and then in your party camp you'll just use however many you need and you can upgrade them, and they'll do more damage, they'll do more stun damage. If you do not upgrade, you're just running into a brick wall. There's also a difficulty slider, which as far as I'm aware just affects the damage numbers and health. I played on a higher difficulty and it wasn't too bad, it wasn't too difficult, but I definitely needed to upgrade my weapons and armor to progress. There were times where I got to a certain point, a group of enemies or a quest, and I had to stop and kind of go back, upgrade, find new materials, or else I wouldn't be able to progress. Finding enchanted weapons was really cool, and you could also upgrade those, not just for extra damage or stun damage, but you could also change the enchantment on them, and you would have a couple of options when doing it. So you could say, oh, right now my weapon gives me 10% health back when I kill someone, or it'll do way more stun damage, or something like that. It gives a lot of freedom in the crafting aspect of the game, which was also a really big positive for me. Some of my favorite quests in this game were the bounty quest, and that's no surprise considering I said the combat is my favorite part of the game. You just go to a bounty board and you'll see a bunch of these quests on there. You just take them all at once, and you might not be able to do them all right now because you need to level up and get stronger, but just doing them was a lot of fun. You just go to the area, kill a bunch of enemies, you take the loot, you get whatever it is to prove you killed this person, you go back, get your reward. That was it. Doing these bounty quests was a lot of fun because I got to engage in more combat. The world design is a little interesting here, where it's not an open world per se, but we'll say that they're open zones, and you can teleport between these zones. It felt a little disconnected with it being like this, but exploring the world was still pretty fun. You could still get into the atmosphere, get into the music that the game brings as you're exploring, different encounters you'll find. And speaking of encounters, I had this one, which was really fun, where I was just randomly exploring, and there was a skeleton sitting on like a throne on a beach, and he offered me to go through a trial. It just kept spawning waves and waves of skeletons just over and over, and I didn't know how long it was going to last, but once I finally did get through it, I got this really badass enchanted weapon. It's like, just things like that are fun, just exploring the world, getting these random encounters. I didn't have too many cool random encounters like this, but when they did happen, they were a lot of fun. While exploring the world, sometimes it will have a little audio cue when there's a body or a chest nearby to loot. This made wearing headphones while playing this game really useful because you can hear that audio cue, that little twinkle from the chest or body, but you can't quite see it. But if you have headphones on, you can pinpoint it really accurately. So it made it a lot of fun to try to keep in tune with all those little details in the world. Overall, Avowed is pretty disappointing to me personally, and I wouldn't recommend purchasing it outright. And I did not. I actually subbed to Game Pass on PC for $1. So I got to play this game for $1, so I'm not too upset about that. If you want to try this game out, definitely go for it and don't let my opinion sway your opinion. Sub to Game Pass, if anything, if you can on PC or Xbox. It'll cost like $1 for me, it did, for the trial. Or it might cost you about $20, which is still way cheaper than the $70 asking price. You might have some fun with it, but for me, this game was very disappointing. And honestly, after this, I'm probably just going to do a playthrough of Morrowind or Fallout New Vegas, not going to lie.